Mama, welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Hey, Mama, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. In today's episode, we're going to take a break from the PhD graduation plogs and come back to that next week. But in today's episode, I wanted to share a really insightful conversation that I had recently with another scholarly mama, and I want to illuminate her voice in this episode because she is absolutely amazing. She is the pinnacle of inspiration, having experienced a life-threatening illness and recovering from that and going on to pursue and complete her PhD as a mama. So I wanted to share that episode with you today because I just find her so inspirational. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. I am so happy to have an amazing guest with me here today, and her name is Dr. Amy Camille Zara, and I am so happy to have you here, Amy. You have an undergraduate degree in psychology, master's degree in disability studies, and you completed your doctorate in psychology last year, looking at the social representations of disabled women in Malta. Really exciting. You're also a wife and mama as well. So welcome to the show. Would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast. So, yes, I'm really excited to do this.
Yay, we're so happy to have you. And before we get into the actual meat of the podcast, I really wanted to share some fun facts that Amy shared with me because they're pretty amazing and you're not going to believe some of the things that Amy has been up to. So you have swam with dolphins in Anguilla. How was that?
It was amazing. We were on holiday through my husband's work there. So yes, it was, an amazing feeling to be. I've always loved, water creatures. So it was a dream come true.
Oh, amazing. I would love to do that. I'm from the Caribbean and I've never done that. So I think that's pretty amazing. And then the other thing that you've done is you've met David Beckham when he started going out with Victoria Beckham. My goodness, what was that like for you?
It was actually in Malta. I was still very young at the time, obviously, but his family used to travel here every summer, basically, for the summer holiday.
Oh.
We got to know, a friend of mine, her father was very much obsessed with Manchester United. So we got to know that he was going to be at the airport. We went there, we took a photo. It was really, really nice. So, yes, it was
just pretty amazing.
Career, and it was just around the time when he had started going out with Victoria Beckham.
Oh, wow. That is pretty cool. Do you still have those photos?
Yes, I have it somewhere at the bottom of some drawer.
And then you attended a town hall event with Barack Obama. How did you manage to pull that one off?
Yes. So basically, I'm part of this Inclusion Leaders Network called the Transatlantic Inclusion Leaders Network, part of the German Marshall Fund, which brings together inclusion leaders from the US and Europe. So that is where kind of it stemmed from. I've been on training and events twice. And then I was picked from the group to attend the town hall event in Berlin with Barack Obama. So yeah, pretty, I don't know, I was awestruck, so to say, like being in there in this room with so many aspiring leaders and obviously listening to him talk. Recount, his experiences, etc.
That is so amazing. Oh my goodness. I'm jealous already.
When I received the email, I was like, this must be, some scam.
That is pretty cool. And then the final one is you got to choose your own height. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this today, but what is that one about?
Yes, so we'll talk about it a bit later, but basically, when I was 21, I lost both my legs. So eventually I started using prosthetic legs to walk with. And obviously, yes, you get to choose, how tall you want to be. So in my case, I don't really wear high heels because my ankle is set at a specific height. So I told them, yeah, maybe you should add, 1 or 2 centimeters, so at least I can compensate kind of.
Oh wow, that is really interesting. I can't wait to get into that with you. So okay, so maybe a nice place to start would be for you to just tell us a little bit more about your journey, obviously talking a little bit about that life-changing medical experience, and then moving on to pursuing and completing your PhD. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
And they're very much intertwined, kind of. So, it's not like they're separate. I did my doctorate probably because of what's happened to me. In fact, I was in a very different sector. So when I started reading for a degree in mechanical engineering. So after sixth form, I attended university, and I was enrolled in studying for mechanical engineering. Then, when I was 21 and I was still a university student, I fell ill. So one morning, I actually woke up, went for a really long walk with my sister-in-law, came back home, started feeling really sick. And at this point, I really didn't think anything of it. I just got into bed, thought it was, the usual February flu kind of thing. So I slept. I remember my parents coming to wake me up, around about supper time. But I told them, I was so sick and that I was going to stay in bed until the next morning. And that's when we realized that something was not quite right, and it wasn't just the flu. In the morning, my mother came to wake me up, thinking that I was going to get ready and go to university. And I told them, I'm really not feeling well. I had a very, very high temperature. Thankfully, my mother got on the phone with our general practitioner, with our GP, and that is what's part of what saved my life actually. And in Malta, we have a different system in the sense that some GPs come home, do home visits. Thankfully, he rushed to our house. And my mother being, I don't know, a mother, I guess. And thankfully, again, that was probably, another aspect which saved my life. Told me, let's go to our bedroom because your room is a mess. I was 21. I had just finished my exams. I had clothes thrown all over. It's like, it's better if you come to our bedroom so he can see you there. It's less chaotic, kind of. But actually, again, when I got to get up from my bed, my legs gave in. I just couldn't stand. And that's when my mother realized that I had a rash on my legs under my pajamas. And that's when she called again our doctor and telling him, I think something is really not quite right. And she said, you know, she's had what's it called? chickenpox before, so it can't be that, so it must be something else. They carried me to my parents' room. The GP came, and that's when he realized, that my breathing was very shallow. My temperature was through the roof, and that's when, they called for an ambulance. I resisted because I had never been to hospital. I had never been admitted to hospital, not so much as for a cast or anything like that. But then I kind of, resigned myself to the fact that, this was going to kill me, basically. At the time, we did not know what I had, but my doctor suspected that it was meningitis. So I was rushed to our general hospital in an ambulance. And I went from not wanting to go to hospital to actually, asking my father, who was in the ambulance with me, whether we were there yet, because I started feeling this excruciating pain like I've never felt before in my legs. I got to the hospital, and that's the last thing I remember, because then I was sedated, and my parents were told that there is very, very little chance of me making it alive, and that it's best if, they gathered our friends and family to say their goodbyes, because, living, being a survivor of meningitis is close to none. Thankfully, by, I don't know, some divine intervention and a lot of, prayers, and somehow I made it through. It was obviously tough, the first 2 weeks I was sedated in ITU, and then eventually when I started coming around and they started reducing the sedation, I was told that the only way for me to remain alive was to have my legs amputated, and as well as parts of my fingers. I needed a lot of skin grafts as well, and that's when, the journey ahead was pretty much a very, very long one. Because I had to start, I had to learn how to do everything again, all the things I took for granted. So simple things like, pulling up your hair in a ponytail, or, putting on your glasses, or, and then the bigger things like eating, writing, typing, using your phone. I had to learn how to do everything again. And obviously there were other setbacks along the way, infections that come and go, and, until your body heals.
Wow.
So that, yes, was my kind of starting point. And I mentioned this again, obviously this is a podcast about, doctorate and mothers who actually read for a PhD, but I feel it's been part of my journey as to why I then eventually later on I decided to change careers, and in the meantime then we also found out that my kidneys had failed because of the damage done because of the meningitis. So I had to start dialysis, and then my father donated me one of his kidneys, and I've been living with it ever since.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It's very much, the biggest altruistic act that anyone can do.
Yeah.
So then I felt that it was, I had such a close encounter with death that, I remember telling myself, I'm not going to spend another day doing something which I don't enjoy, which I don't feel passionate about. And that's when I decided to read for a degree in psychology, which I eventually, graduated from with the first class degree. I then went on to do a master's in disability studies, because I then got involved in activism. I set up with other people an organization, and eventually then that led obviously to my doctorate in psychology, but also kind of, bringing together the two subjects of disability and psychology.
That is amazing.
It's been quite a journey, but I still can't, sometimes I can't believe the fact that the PhD is over, as I'm sure everyone else who has been through it can relate to
Yeah,
this.
I can definitely relate to that. I'm still like, I recently had my graduation ceremony, and I'm like, is this really happening? Like, it doesn't feel quite real. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. But before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to touch on something that you said, around having that close encounter with death. And not many of us have experienced that. So I can't say that I can fully relate to that, but I can imagine that, it gives you this zest for life. Being so close to death gives you a reason, a purpose for living, and to make sure that your life matters and it counts and you do something meaningful with it. And so, you have done exactly that. You've gone on to do so much purposeful work, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go on. But I just really wanted to kind of highlight that and highlight how you have managed to turn something so awful, so painful, so life altering into your purposeful journey. So well done. I cannot imagine the strength it takes for somebody to do that. And yeah, you just inspired me. I feel like bursting into tears right now.
Not my intention, but I think, yes, it does give you a different perspective to life. I feel I also have to say that I probably would not have done half the things I managed to do had it not been for the support of my family, my husband, um, friends. Again, the donation of the kidney of my father, my life would have been totally different.
Yeah.
Would not have been maybe able to travel as much and not maybe even, have the energy to pursue half of the things that I've been able to do. So I really want to also highlight that, because we often think of, it's we always say it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village, for someone to, get through such a traumatic experience. And I think it's important that I feel that it's important, as I also mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. And there's no way that you could have done any of that without that village. And I'm so glad you had that to bring you through those tough times and all the prayers and the support that you've had to get you from there to here. So as a mother, as a wife, as an activist, as an academic, as a public speaker, you're so many amazing things. How did you manage to integrate these multiple roles while you were pursuing your doctorate?
It wasn't easy, and obviously there were, throughout the whole journey, it took me almost 8 years to finish my doctorate, and there were things obviously that, in some instances, the highlight was obviously the family, which was obviously when I was giving birth to my son, and maybe the first year, and then I felt that then it was a time to kind of maybe put more effort into my work and less in other things. So I really don't want to give the image that I'm some super human being that I was doing all of these things at the same time. It's not like that. It's just a kind of this journey of up and down. Sometimes it's the PhD which is up, other times it's the PhD is on the sixth or seventh burner.
Yeah.
Obviously, things happen, family life, goes on. But I think obviously time management is key. I think that was I felt that it was part of, me being able to finish this, what I thought was insurmountable, goal. Because at times it did feel like that, I'm sure you can relate that, I was questioning why was I even putting myself through the stress of this, especially towards the end when you're, preparing for finishing the writing and then getting yourself prepared for the examiners. I kept telling myself, haven't I been through enough stress? Why did I put myself through this as well? But it was also part of my career in the sense that, as I said, I am a lecturer. At the time, I was an assistant lecturer at the University of Malta. So it was also something that I wanted to achieve if I really wanted to continue doing that, which I which I do and which I love and which, gives me a sense of satisfaction and pride. I love, lecturing our students. I love the research part. So yes, going back to your question, I think it takes a lot of juggling and a lot of time management, some sacrifices, especially in the last 6 months. I remember, that was when kind of the PhD took center stage, and it was on the first burner, so to say. And I said, at this point in time, my priorities are my family and my PhD. But as well, my husband was very supportive, so he would take our son, for example, out during holidays, whereas I would stay home and work, or else I would actually go to the office at university during recess, so as to make sure that, I don't get any distractions, both from home, but also, at university, it used to be super quiet and actually eerie. But I felt that in a way, helped me work in the sense that, I couldn't get distracted into chatting or going for a coffee, etc.
Yeah.
I think, in a way, looking back, that's how I think I was, able to manage. Obviously, as I said, it took me probably longer than others, but I had to be true to myself in the sense that, I said, look, I'm juggling a lot. I got pregnant. I had a newborn throughout this all. So, I couldn't set any, unattainable goals for myself. So I think it's
Yeah.
to be very realistic also in the goal and the smaller goals and how you're going to achieve your doctorate.
Absolutely. I relate to that. My journey's been very similar. I relate to everything you said there, and, acknowledging that there are times where things come up the priority list, and there are times where they, recede down to the bottom of that list. And that's okay. And also I think the point you made there about setting realistic goals, setting realistic expectations for yourself, knowing that you're juggling lots of different things. You're not competing with other people. Other people's journeys are different. And this is your journey. And you just have to, juggle as you can through it and take the support when it's available from your spouse, from family, from whoever's available to help, and just help you get through that.
Prepare meals for us, as did my mother-in-law. So I think it's important to, have this support network, be aware that it's there, and not to be afraid to kind of say yes to these offers of support.
Absolutely.
I very much agree with everyone having their own journey. Everyone is, trying to do their own thing. I was also very kind of purposeful in the sense that in my decisions and in the way I wanted to be as a mother. I did not want to feel that I did not want to feel resentment towards my PhD in the sense that it was taking me away from my son. I have only one son. Having him with a kidney transplant was a very big blessing. So I wanted to make sure that I enjoy every moment with him. I didn't want to feel that the PhD, I'm missing out on taking him on play dates, on taking him to extracurricular activities. So again, he was my first, and he continues to be my first priority. And, and that's where kind of the balancing act came in. So things like, I tried not to work on weekends, although, as I said, there were times when obviously if things happened during the week, then I had to make up for it. But I try to very much have this, experience where, yes, the PhD is there, but I'm not going to kind of, not enjoy being a mother.
Yes. I am all about that. That I'm all about that because, at the end of the day, I always say, just because you are a mum doesn't mean you can't do a PhD. Just because you're doing a PhD doesn't mean that your family, your kids, your husband that these important people that you love, that they don't come first in your life. Like, you can actually, enjoy both of these journeys. And it may mean that it takes a little bit longer. It may look a little bit different for you, but it doesn't mean that you cannot enjoy them both and achieve them both. So I'm really, really happy to hear you say that. And like you said earlier, it doesn't always mean that everything's happening at the same time. Like, there are times where things are, like we said, moving up and down the priority list, but it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice one completely for the other. So I'm really happy to hear you had the same experience.
It's more as especially as mothers who are embarking on this journey or have embarked on this journey, because I don't think it can get very, very lonely. Reading for a PhD in itself is a very lonely journey. So doing that, and being a mother, I think there isn't enough, discussion about that. And maybe, others might feel that they're the only ones doing it, because at times it did, in a way, feel like I was the only, mother who was, I don't know, crazy enough to embark on. So that's why I feel, and that's why I accepted to be on this podcast, because I feel that we need to talk about it more. We need to, put it out there a bit more, and so other people, other mothers can really relate to this and feel that they're not on their own, basically.
Yes, exactly. That's why we are here. This is exactly why we're here. So I want to talk about some of the challenges that you faced as a mother while you were pursuing your PhD. And I know we mentioned some of them, but tell me some of the strategies that you use to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, it's very much related, and it all boils down, I think, to time management at the end of the day. So some of the strategies that I would use was, using my time purposefully. Obviously, I used to carve out time for, my own self-care and, my own relaxation. But then I was very, purposeful in the sense that if I was taking my son to, I don't know, an extracurricular activity, then I would take my laptop with me in the car, would actually stay there rather than, traveling, between that place and home or somewhere else, so as not to waste time, and work in the car. And things that I could do simultaneously. So, reading whilst I'm waiting at, I don't know, in a waiting room, for example. So I think it very much boils down at the end of the day. If you really want to finish the doctorate and this journey, is managing your time wisely. I'm not a night owl, and I'm not an early morning person. So, if you're out there and you think that you have to stay up till 2 in the morning to finish your PhD, I can assure you that I'm not that kind of person. I never will be, and yet, I made it.
Yeah.
And I was also working part time at the time, so there was also that. So, it's important that you carve out your time. And with a PhD, I feel, and this is something that maybe a lot of people who have not pursued a PhD don't really understand. You can't just work for 1 hour, in the sense that until you get into it, it takes time. You need a long amount of hours. So things like going for the day. I was lucky enough that my supervisor had a second house, kind of, which they use for the summer. So I would ask her if I could go there for the day, and like that, I knew that I had this from 9 in the morning till 4:30 until it was time for me to pick up my son. A long stretch of time where I would work.
Yeah.
On a PhD, it's not like, you're looking at emails or you're writing a short paragraph where you work for an hour. That was my battle with my husband. With me, like, I have an hour, go and work. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. To write and to get into the feel of it,
Yeah.
need a longer stretch of time. So that was one thing that really helped me. Another thing that really helped was our faculty had organized a writing seminar. So they would organize this over a weekend. I usually didn't sleep there because, I felt again that I needed to be home with my son. But I used to inform my husband, look, that weekend I'm not going to be available. And these were one-offs, obviously. But I felt that also gave me, a long stretch of time where I would, really engage with the literature, with findings, or, whichever process that I was going through at that time. So that also really helped. I then continued, in fact, then a small group of us through this writing retreat, where like 2 or 3 would go to this retreat house every now and then. So we'd make at a point to book ahead, like once a month, for example, or twice a month. And again, we would go for the day, trying, to leave distractions of social media, mobile phone, emails, etc. It would be, I used to tell myself, it's as if I'm away. So,
Yeah.
that's my emails. And I'm going to work. And that also really helped a lot. So I encourage anyone who's on this journey to really do that, to carve out days where they could be, absent for a long stretch of time, to be able to really engage with their work.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I always struggle to kind of work in little half an hour, 1 hour bits. And especially because, especially if you're at home and there's all the distractions and, oh, the laundry needs to be done. Oh, I better start dinner early. It's like all those things.
Another thing
And
that's so much better than sitting down.
yeah, it's like all of a sudden the whole house needs cleaning, right? So I think, those writing retreats sound amazing. And the fact that you had a little group to kind of do that with, give you that little bit of accountability, which is really, really good.
Of course, as well, because as I said earlier, reading for a PhD is very lonely. You're the one who's, getting really into the topic. There's no one else who quite understands the topic as you do in a certain sense. And you work mostly on your own. So having, this group of other people who are also, we each had a different journey of our own. We're at different phases. Some
Yeah.
started later and finished before. Some had started much earlier, but at least it helped. It helped with the accountability. So, if we booked for, on the 8th of next month, then I felt that I had to show up, because otherwise,
Yeah.
something's coming up. I had an appointment, a meeting with a student, but if
Yeah.
it's marked on my calendar as, it's the writing day, then it's, it's equivalent as to me having a very important meeting, or, me.
Yes.
So it's important to also highlight the importance of these days, because we tend,
Yes.
okay, I put it in the calendar, and then, if something more important comes up, I'll say yes, and then I'll
Put it
reschedule.
to one side. Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think, one of the things about putting that in the calendar, I always say to people, if it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. Because one of the things, about putting it in the calendar, and also that accountability of other people showing up, like you said, it forces you to show up for yourself. And really, that's what it comes down to on this journey. You have to show up for yourself. Nobody's going to do this PhD for you. This PhD is not going to do itself. You've got to show up and do the work. And so being really intentional about setting those dates, booking that session with your group, and showing up for yourself and doing that work is so key, like so key. Because like you said, if you just say, oh, on Friday, I'm going to do a couple of hours of work, something comes up, it's so easy to push that one side. So easy. But when you've got that accountability and you've got to show up, you will show up and do the work. So we really have to create those opportunities for ourselves.
It also doesn't mean that you have to rely on your sense of motivation, because let's face it, we're not always
Yes.
motivated.
Exactly.
As we're saying, sometimes, cleaning the kitchen sounds more, exciting than
Yeah.
sitting down to work. So, and that's another, I think, key point, that not relying on your, level of motivation to work.
Yeah.
And this helped in that sense as well, because whether I felt like it or not, I was going to go there, show up, open my laptop and work
And get to work. Yeah.
I would write one sentence or 5 paragraphs, but at least, I
You
was
showed
there
up.
doing something in relation to my PhD. And also that feels that you are being proactive. Because
Yes.
sometimes not engaging with it and, not looking at it for, first it's 1 week, then it's 2 weeks. That's harder and harder to go back to it and engage with it. So
Yeah.
to me, that has worked wonders.
Amazing. Amazing. So you've had an impressive career trajectory from engineering to psychology to disability studies and then back to psychology. What advice would you give other PhD students who may be considering a career pivot?
Go for it. I think maybe, I don't know, it's a generally generational thing. I don't know if it's also the same in the UK, but it's kind of, here, at least my generation probably, which is probably the last generation to have this kind of sense of fixed career trajectory, that if you're going into medicine, if you're going into law, then you're expected to kind of, continue in that sector. And my decision to change careers completely did come with, are you sure you're going to give up the inch in front of your name? You're going to give up having a warrant and being to be able to practice as an engineer. You might also be giving up, the pay that comes with being in that profession. So I did encounter some of those. But I never doubted my decision. There was never a sense of regret. So for those of you who are, maybe considering a career change or wanting to read for a PhD in a completely different subject, which is unrelated to what you're doing now, I say if you feel that is going to give you a sense of purpose and sense of satisfaction, then just go for it. And at the end of the day, it's your decision, and you're going to be the one spending hours and days on end looking into this subject and eventually becoming an expert of this subject. So if it gives you purpose, go ahead.
I love that. I love that. And I love what you said about, being brave enough to not listen to the kind of negativity or naysayers or people who are they're not intentionally trying to discourage you. They're just fearful for you. They're fearful that you are making a huge life mistake. And one of the things that I've kind of learned on my own journey, and I've navigated that as well, is you really have to trust yourself. You really have to trust yourself in knowing this is your life and these decisions, you are going to have to live with the consequence of these decisions. So if you're prepared to do that and you feel a calling to a particular field, particular area, and you believe that this is the right decision for you, then you've got to trust yourself on that and at least give it a go. And the reality is, nothing in life is permanent. No decision is forever. You can always change your mind in the future. So if you do something, you give yourself the opportunity to try and it doesn't work out the way you want, there's nothing saying that you cannot change to something else. And I think, like you said, this generation that we're in, we just have this thing of not making decisions out of fear and feeling like we've got to stay on a trajectory because that's the path that has been laid for us and this is what everybody before has done, so this is what we've got to do. And I think when you begin to trust yourself and you begin to say, look, I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone, I'm willing to try something new, so many doors open, so many doors open for you. So I love that you're encouraging the listeners to do that as well, because I feel like often, especially as mothers, because we feel like our decisions are gonna have consequences for our kids and like how on earth could we, jeopardize their futures? Like, it's even harder. You've got even more pressure on the decision. So yeah, just being bold enough to trust ourselves that it's okay to try something new, do something different and step outside of that comfort zone is so encouraging to hear.
Especially as mothers, as you said, because I think there's this tendency to think that whatever decision you're going to take is going to have an impact on the family. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, so now that you have completed your PhD, how do you plan to continue managing this intricate blend of post-PhD academic life, family life, and activism?
Yes. So, as I said in the beginning, sometimes I still have to remind myself, I'm ready, I'm finished. It still feels so surreal because obviously, it would have been such a big part of your life. And there was a bit of an anticlimax in the sense. I don't know if you've had felt it, but
Yeah, I have.
that's it. So, when you're going through it, you think that, once you finish, you're going to be, this, I don't know, really happy and fulfilled. And then
Yeah.
I handed it in and I was like, so now what am I going to do with myself? But it didn't last long because then, I started getting really excited that I could say yes to a lot of projects, which is another mistake I think that we tend to do, especially if you're in academia, but even if you're not, that once you finish a PhD, you think, now I'm going to have so much time on my hands. And, I was really excited and I started saying yes to anything that came my way, in terms of writing a book, a chapter, writing an article, reviewing articles for different journals. So it's very important, I think, that you take the time to digest this whole process and not maybe be too excited or overexcited to embark on a lot of things. I think that was um, something which I could have done better, probably. Having said
Yeah.
that, obviously, I was, as I said, very excited. So, and it's nice, to finally then be able to use, your findings and use your experience for other things, rather than always having this black cloud of a PhD over your head all the time.
Yeah.
So yes, eventually then I continued with my work at university. I'm now a full timer, and I'll be also taking on the headship of the Department of Disability Studies at the University of Malta. So
Amazing.
it's shoes to fill because I had people who ran it before me. You know, uh, been they've done a lot of good work, so I'm excited to embark on the journey. It also comes with sense of again, will I be able to balance everything? But then I remind myself that I've been able to balance work, family, and the PhD. So maybe the skills are there,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm really excited. To do more work in terms of research and publishing my work. So that is what I hope to continue to do.
Amazing. And I love what you said there about, feeling this sense of imposter syndrome in filling this new role, but reminding yourself that you have the skills. You have the skills of juggling PhD academic life with family and motherhood. And I think maybe perhaps that's one of the things that has been understated. It's like riding a bicycle almost, that, it's hard at the beginning. You finally find your stride, you finally develop the skills and find your stride. And then you go a completely different route and you're like, oh my goodness, can I do it? Am I going to be able to do it? And then it's like, no, you've developed the skills. You have developed the skills of being able to balance these various roles. And all you need to do is apply those skills to a new situation. So I think really it's come down to, for mamas who are on this journey, navigating this journey, is focus on developing those skills. And when you can develop those skills, whatever situation comes your way in the future, you have the skills to manage it. So I think that's really key. So given your experiences as a PhD student and now as a lecturer, what changes do you think are needed in higher education to better support students who are parents or living with disabilities?
Yes, I think we need to consider higher education needs to acknowledge the fact that there are now, parents who are embarking on this journey. And I think it needs to be given more importance in terms of support. Maybe it's not given as much importance, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's given informally, or maybe haphazardly in some instances.
Yeah.
And there's no formal structure. Sometimes I feel it depends on whether you're lucky or not, in the sense, in my case, I had a very, very, very supportive supervisor and co-supervisor. I would go to my supervisor's house with my son in the pushchair. She would stay playing with him whilst I could stay working. So, but it's not the case for everyone. And I think that's where it needs to change. I'm not saying that obviously supervisors, have to do this.
Yeah.
Not at all. But it's in the sense that, it shouldn't depend on whether one is lucky or not.
Yeah.
There should be formal structures for parents to have support. In Malta, to be fair, there is childcare support for people who either work, and it's free. It's for free.
Yeah.
So people who work or people who are pursuing their studies, they have support through that with childcare for children who are not in school yet. And that's available for everyone, whether you're pursuing, your A levels, a degree, or a PhD. And I think that in itself helps a lot as a measure. But in terms of higher education, I think, yes, they need to acknowledge that there are mothers and fathers who are embarking on this journey, and there needs to be a better balance, a work-life balance. It doesn't just, it can't be adopted only to work, but it also needs to be adopted when one is pursuing something as a degree or a PhD.
Yeah.
A PhD even more, because obviously of the time that you need to invest in this. So I think that we need to work on that more in terms of research and looking at what has been working, and maybe the challenges that parents encounter when they're on this journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I guess as you were talking about earlier, feeling like you are so alone on this journey, feeling like nobody understands, nobody gets it, makes it that much harder. You know how deep you have to dig to just wake up and keep going on this PhD journey, knowing how hard it is, knowing how, the things that you feel you're missing out on. And so I feel like anything that allows us to feel less alone, allow us to feel like we could show up as our whole selves, as moms, as researchers, as wives, as whoever, whatever we are. Creating spaces where that's possible will make every difference. Because when moms, I always say this, when moms win where it matters, everybody wins. You are creating a legacy for your family. And if we can support mums in doing that, I think it just lifts society as a whole, really. So you're right.
And I think acknowledging that, within these circles, one thing that, as I said, and it has been ongoing, is that the faculty organizes PhD circle, basically. So
Yeah.
now and then they organize meetings for the students who are, reading for a PhD, and that helps in itself. But also within that, to be able to say, look, I'm a mother and I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Father, and I am struggling with, creating a balance between my PhD and my family. I think it's important that to have these circles is already a big step in the right direction. But then within those circles, to be able to acknowledge these realities and to be given the space to be able to say these things, I think is equally important. And that is where I think we need to work on making sure that we are creating these spaces and that people feel that they can say these things,
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where we should be heading.
So true. So true. So you work with Amputees for Amputees, which is an organization which you co-founded, which I'd love for you to share more about, which has brought about significant changes in services for amputees in Malta. What would you like to share with us about this purposeful work?
Yes, so after I lost both of my legs, I remember, thinking it was very important for me to actually be able to see someone. And I had never seen anyone who had lost their legs. I remember this woman who had come to see me that my parents had found through common friends. And to me, that was, I think, one of the biggest sources of support. Because obviously, the family is there, the doctors are there, the, physiotherapists are going to tell you what you need to do. But until you actually see someone doing it, then, there's always going to be this sense of, am I going to be able to walk? Am I going to get out of this bed?
Yeah.
So I give a lot of importance to that. And I felt that we needed maybe a more formal way of doing this for other patients who are going through this. So that was one of the main aims of creating this organization, to offer support, peer support, basically, so that anyone who's going through this experience can be visited by someone who has been through this. So yes, I think that along with that, then obviously there were other aims of, we were saying that there were issues with the services for amputees, and then also creating a social space for people where people could talk and learn from our professionals and from each other. So those were mainly the three aims as to why we set up the organization. We continue to function, we continue to do a lot of work, especially recently. We've been very much involved in, again, lobbying for better services, and for making our voices heard, the voice of the patients, ensuring that, we get adequate services when it comes to amputees and prosthetic legs. And obviously, we continue providing peer support to anyone who's going through this experience.
I think that is incredible. Again, using what was a very traumatic experience for yourself, channeling that into serving others and uplifting the voices of others and lobbying for support and, better care for patients like yourself, I think is so purposeful, and it's one way of giving to those who, may not have those spaces. They don't have spaces where they can come and say, how did you manage to do that? How did you navigate this situation? How did you manage to do a PhD knowing that you almost died a few years ago from this incident? Like, how did you find the motivation to do that? And just being able to inspire these other patients, some of them may be going through other challenging situations, is so remarkable. And if people are interested in knowing more about Amputees for Amputees, where could they find out more about this?
amputeesforamputees.org.mt. We're in the process of rebranding at the moment, so there might be times where obviously the website might not be completely accessible. But yes, they can contact us on the website, and we also have a page on Facebook where they can contact us on that.
Amazing.
Yeah, our services are specifically to the local community, but we're more than happy to then pinpoint other similar organizations in one's own.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. So if you could share one piece of advice with the mama who's listening to this episode, who's juggling motherhood, juggling her PhD on top of that, and dealing with challenging life circumstances, what would that single piece of advice be?
If I had to choose one single piece of advice, I think it would be to take care of oneself, because the age-long phrase where you can't, give from an empty cup. So it's very, very important that you take care of your own mental health, and your own, health and self. So I think that's very, very important. So before, juggling anything else, I think it's very important to be aware of that, and to make sure that you're taking really good care of yourself. Then eventually, with some planning and organization, and writing down a to-do list, I believe that things can start falling into place. But unless you are really taking care of yourself, and if you need a break, you take it, because that's another thing that it felt like I couldn't afford myself the time to take a break, or that I would feel guilty if I'm sitting down on the sofa watching a series, that I should be using that time. But then, I would say, this is my time, and I need that in order to be able to look after my son, go to work, look after the family, pursue my PhD. So I think if it's one piece of advice, would be to do that, to make sure that you are taking of yourself first and foremost.
I love that. I love that. Because at the end of the day, like you said, if we are not taking care of this vessel, how can we pour into anybody else's cups? How can we pour into even the very PhD that we're trying to pursue? Like, you just can't do it. It doesn't work like that. So I love that your piece of advice is to prioritize that self-care. Look after yourself so that you can look after the people you love.
If you need to take a break, then take a break.
Do. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. But I know that people will want to get in touch with you after this episode. They may want to follow you online. Where can they find you online?
They can find me on Instagram. It's Amy Camille Zara. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Facebook.
Amazing. I'll leave the links to follow Amy in the show notes, so that if you want to follow her, you can. And also the link for Amputees for Amputees as well. I'll leave that in the show notes in case people want to get in touch with you about that. So thank you so much for coming, Amy. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. And I know we've been following each other for quite some time. So it's nice to have you here in person, in the flesh, and sharing your story, your amazing story of inspiration for our scholarly mamas to listen to. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. As I said, it's been a pleasure, and also an honor for me to be invited on your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.